Good afternoon. My name is Winston. I'm a candidate for the Democratic nomination for Congress representing the 6th District here in Missouri. I'm a member of the Democratic National Committee and of the State Committee of the Missouri Democratic Party. I am also a father, a grandfather, and a concerned citizen, an extremely concerned citizen. Last but not least, I am a retired civics teacher who has now gone rogue, a fact that may become evident as we proceed here today. It says in big gold letters right up there, "Ideas control the world." I would like to begin today by sharing a few ideas with you that are exerting some degree of control in the world at present. On July 4th, 1776, 56 brave men signed the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson was the principal author of the Declaration. He was influenced greatly by John Locke and other political philosophers who contributed thoughts and ideas to what became known as the Enlightenment. The ideas expressed in the Declaration of Independence are in fact quite noble ideals. We have always struggled, and we continue to struggle, to live up to those ideals. When I was in the 7th grade, I was required to memorize the heart of the first 2 paragraphs of the Declaration. I would like to share an edited version with you of those first 2 paragraphs, paraphrasing a bit to be more inclusive. These are the ideals upon which our nation, quite literally, was founded. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All people are created equal, endowed by our Creator with equal, natural, and unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among us, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any government or any form of government fails in its duty to secure our rights or no longer has our consent, it is our right, it is our duty to alter or to abolish that government and to institute new government or a new form of government that will effectively secure our rights and provide for our future security. Alterations are needed at this time. It is our right, it is our duty to make the necessary alterations. As citizens of the United States, we are truly blessed in this regard to be able to change our government with ballots instead of bullets. In 1971, soon-to-be Supreme Court Justice Lewis Powell wrote a confidential memorandum and sent it to Eugene Snyder, Jr., then the chairman of the Education Committee of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The title of the memorandum was Attack on American Free Enterprise System. This 34-page memorandum described in detail the attack business and corporate interests coming not just from communists, but from other revolutionaries of the extreme left who were out to destroy the entire system. He then laid out a detailed plan to repeal this attack, which included a broader and more vigorous role in the political arena for business and corporate interests. Over the past 46 years, the ideas and the plan laid out to repeal this attack on business has been in place. And now with a few clicks on the internet, you can access a copy of the actual memorandum, which has exercised a considerable amount of control in our world. Business and the enterprise system, especially multinational corporations, are no longer in deep trouble, which was the final line of the Powell Memorandum. Business and the enterprise system are in deep trouble, and the hour is late. Meanwhile, while business is doing quite well these days in their pursuit of ever-increasing profits, Everything else is falling apart. Millions and millions of people are struggling to make ends meet. In many cases, despite the fact that they are working 2 or 3 jobs. Our healthcare system is in crisis, and the climate crisis is threatening the very existence of the human race. Our democratic values are under attack, and our government is failing us. A government that is supposed to be a government of, by, and for the people is instead a government for and by corporate interest. Corporate interests have gained complete control of the Republican Party and effective control of the Democratic Party. We, the people, are the ones who are now in deep trouble, and the hour is late. Robert M. La Follette, a Republican and a progressive, an oxymoron these days, in the latter part of the 19th and early part of the 20th century, was a leader of the first progressive movement, and he expressed this idea: if the people want a government of their own, they must do the work of making it their own. I will add a corollary. If the people want a government of their own, we must have a political party of our own. Over the past 2 or 3 years, numerous writers and pundits have expressed the idea that there is a struggle underway for the soul of both of our major political parties. I agree. A populist uprising is underway, and I use the term populist advisedly, and I want to define it. A populist is someone who shares and represents the views and values of ordinary people. Some people define anything involving ordinary people as populist. I want to make it clear that I do not include the actions of angry, hateful, racist, bigoted people as being populist in nature. The populist uprising to which I am referring was inspired by both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, who each in very different ways gave their supporters hope that we could put an end to politics as usual and elect a government of, by, and for the people. And between them, these two outsiders did a pretty good job of putting politics as usual on the ropes. We have an opportunity this year to land a knockout punch. Change is in the air. Revolution is in the air. There are, however, powerful forces arrayed against those of us who want change. The status quo is well defended. I do not believe the populist uprising within the Republican Party will succeed. I would be happy to be proven wrong. Corporate interests are too well entrenched within the GOP. They round up the votes they need to win by appealing to voters who are opposed to gun control, abortion, gay rights, immigrants, and even government itself. However, their true agenda, which is increasingly easy to discern, is tax cuts for corporations and tax-averse billionaires, and deregulation to allow corporations to pollute, pillage, and plunder more effectively in pursuit of ever-increasing profits at the expense of workers, consumers, and the environment. The Republican Party is a corporate party. They are all in as a corporate party. On the other hand, I believe our chances of success are much better within the Democratic Party. The corrupting influence of corporate interest and unbridled greed is concentrated at the top of our party. Corrupted Democrats may hold positions of power within the party, but they are few in number, and our charter and bylaws are thoroughly democratic in nature. The foundation for a strong and united Democratic Party that is truly a party of the people has already been laid. In July of 2016, a platform committee made up of the supporters of both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders did the hard work of compromising and reaching consensus. They drafted a platform calling for legislation that, if passed into law, would dramatically improve the quality of life for tens of millions of our fellow Americans and make our elections and our government more genuinely democratic. The key to making the Democratic Party all that it can be is to elect candidates who truly support the legislation called for in our platform. As a member of the DNC, I submitted a resolution last October, which was adopted by the DNC, encouraging Democratic members of Congress and Democratic candidates for Congress to actively support the legislation called for in our platform. Once upon a time, Benjamin Franklin shared an idea. Well done is better than well said. Our platform says a lot of good things. We need to do what we say we intend to do. Our promise to America is designed to help make the powerful vision expressed in the Democratic Party platform a glorious reality. The strategy involved did not originate with me. In 1994, Newt Gingrich came up with a very successful strategy to help Republicans win seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. He drafted 10 specific pieces of legislation and packaged them as the Contract with America. Bill Clinton called it the Contract on America. 433 of 435 Republican candidates for the U.S. House signed on, pledging that if they were elected to a majority in the House, they would pass all 10 of the bills. The Contract with America was a huge success. Republicans picked up 52 seats and took control of the House for the first time in 40 years. This year, the Democratic Party needs to pick up 24 seats in the House to regain control. In 2006, Senator Jeff Merkley, who was at that time a member of the state legislature in Oregon, employed a similar strategy using progressive legislation and flipped the Oregon legislature from red to blue in a single election. At the DNC meeting last October, Chairman Tom Perez talked about studying the other team's playbook and borrowing the plays that work. The Contract with America play has been run twice, and it's gone for a long touchdown both times. I am proposing that we, the Democratic Party, run this play 51 times this year, once for seats in Congress and once more in each of the 50 states for seats in the state legislature. This is shaping up to be a good year for our party. Based on my firm belief that anything Newt can do, we can do better, I predict that our promise to America will make a good year even better. For Oakners, the legislation included in the Contract America was based on the Republican agenda. The legislation called for in our promise to America is drawn from the Democratic Party platform. The Republican agenda does a good job of protecting the interest of corporations and tax-averse billionaires. The legislation included in our promise to America promotes the general welfare and will make our government more genuinely democratic. 5 Democratic candidates for Congress from Missouri are here today to be the first to sign our promise to America. Every indication is that over the next few weeks and months, hundreds of additional Democratic candidates will sign our promise to America. When the voters elect us to majorities in both houses of Congress, we intend to keep this promise. And when we keep this promise, change will come. And I want to start by reading or reciting to you from memory, really, the most powerful sentence in the Democratic Party platform. One sentence that would get Democrats elected from coast to coast, from sea to shining sea. We are committed to doing everything we can to build a full employment economy where everyone has a job that pays enough to raise a family and live in dignity with a sense of purpose. This language, of course, echoes the Economic Bill of Rights that President Franklin D. Roosevelt unveiled in his 1944 State of the Union address. 74 years ago. The following year, 1945, a bill was introduced into Congress that included the only way to make this vision a reality, the only way to guarantee every worker in this country a job that pays a decent wage, and that is a federal job guarantee. The Full Employment Act of 1945 contained a federal job guarantee, but that was negotiated out of the act before it passed the following year as the Employment Act of 1946, which does call upon the federal government to do everything possible to achieve full employment. But since 1946, the official definition of full employment has been raised and raised and raised in terms of how many percent of the workers seeking jobs could be unemployed and still consider it full employment. That figure is now up to 6%. 6% unemployment is considered full employment. That will come as news to the more than 1 out of every 20 workers looking for work who is unable to find it. The climate crisis that Angelica just introduced and talked about would provide socially useful jobs for every able-bodied worker in this country who is without socially useful work at this point. The rest of Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights was not just a guaranteed job for every worker that paid enough to cover food and shelter, but that did include health care as a right. That included educational opportunities as a right. That included Social Security as a right, and something left over for recreation. A decent standard of living for every man, woman, and child in our country. We can do that. Now, the second bill that I'm going to talk about, there is some legislation in Congress. America's College Promise Act of 2017 was introduced by Representative Bobby Scott of Virginia. As of February 13th, it had 6 co-sponsors. But our platform promises more, much more than that. Our platform says that Democrats know that every child, no matter who they are, how much their families earn, or where they live, should have access to a high-quality education from preschool through high school and beyond. So we support a public education act that would provide federal funding for locally controlled public schools, including community colleges, and universities, with access to those schools for every man, woman, and child of any and every age in this country. You can read a lot more about all of this at our website, promisetoamerica.us, and I encourage you to visit that website and take a look around. Beginning next week, we will be listing the candidates who have signed on to our Promise to America. There are 2 candidates here in Missouri who have indicated they will definitely sign but could not be here today, and 3 more that have expressed interest that leads me to believe that they will sign. So we should have at least 10 candidates here in Missouri who will sign our Promise to America. And I want to close out with just a few remarks. First of all, I want to thank again all of my fellow candidates for joining us here today, and all of you for joining us here today. And I'll close with this. In drafting our Promise to America, I sought as much input as possible from my fellow candidates, my fellow DNC members, and my fellow political activists. The 10 pieces of legislation included in our Promise to America represent the planks in the Democratic Party platform that are the most utilitarian, that do the most good for the most people. There are many other pieces of legislation called for in our platform that have already been introduced into Congress in many cases, or that should be introduced. The resolution I mentioned earlier encouraging Democratic members of Congress and Democratic candidates for Congress to actively support legislation called for in our platform includes all of the legislation called for in our platform, not just these 10 bills. I want to cite just one example of something very important that is not included in our Promise to America, but is included in the Democratic Party platform. A lot of young people organized some incredible marches that took place a few days ago. This is what the Democratic Party platform has to say about the issue of gun violence that these passionate, committed young adults have raised. We will expand and strengthen background checks and close dangerous loopholes in our current laws. Repeal the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act to revoke the dangerous legal immunity protections gun makers and sellers now enjoy. And keep weapons of war, such as assault weapons and large capacity ammunition magazines, off our streets. We will fight back against attempts to make it harder for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to revoke federal licenses from law-breaking gun dealers and ensure guns do not fall into the hands of terrorists, intimate partner abusers, other violent criminals, and those with severe mental health issues. There is insufficient research on effective gun prevention policies, which is why the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention must have the resources it needs to study gun violence as a public health issue. These young people seemed very aware. I was at marches in both St. Joseph, Missouri and Kansas City, Missouri on Saturday. And I heard these young people speaking, and as we marched together, I saw signs that said, "Vote them out." If people will not admit that the climate crisis is real and we need to do something about it, we need to vote them out. If people refuse in Congress to do anything about gun violence, we need to vote them out. These young people get it, and I know they're not the only ones. I think we're going to have a very exciting and consequential election this year. We have an opportunity to have a transformative election that changes the makeup of the parties for decades to come. If elected, those of us who have made this promise to America will not limit our efforts to these 10 pieces of legislation. On the promisetoamerica.us website, you will find a tab for platform pledges. We'll be expanding the bills covered under that over the next few weeks and months. You will see bills listed that have been introduced and how many sponsors or co-sponsors they have. Our Promise to America is part of this larger Platform Pledge Fulfillment Project. It is, however, the centerpiece of the Platform Pledge Fulfillment Project. I'm hoping that many of my fellow DNC members will join us in this effort. It is in the bylaws of the Democratic Party that the DNC and its members are supposed to promote fulfillment of our platform pledge. That is the key to making the Democratic Party the party it claims to be, the party we so desperately need it to be. Over the next few weeks and months, we will be in contact with every Democratic candidate who is running for a seat in Congress, incumbent and non-incumbent alike. We want every voter in America, Democratic, Republican, Independent, or none of the above, to have the opportunity to vote for a candidate who has made our promise to America. I will close by mentioning a few more good ideas. Start with the end in mind. Getting this passed is our end goal. This legislation and much more. Keep your eyes on the prize. Let's focus on getting candidates who have made this promise to America elected. And don't count your chickens before they hatch. About a week ago, I allowed myself to count 10 chickens before they hatched. I allowed myself to dream. I let myself imagine what it will be like if we elect majorities in both houses of Congress who have promised to pass the legislation included in our promise to America, and we keep those promises. I imagined what it will be like when our country guarantees every worker a job that pays enough to raise a family and live in dignity with a sense of purpose. When our healthcare system truly puts people ahead of profits. When every child, no matter who they are, how much their families earn, or where they live, has access to a high-quality education from preschool through high school and beyond. When our elections and our government are more genuinely democratic. And I was nearly overcome by the joy I felt at the thought of what a wonderful world this will be when we succeed. And so I will close with an idea that John Lennon once expressed in song. We're not supposed to have any music in here today, so I may get in a little trouble, but we're done, so they can kick us out if they want. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us, and the world will live as one. Thank you for coming. Good afternoon.